This is the exit report for Winnebago Public Schools. And first off, we just want to thank everyone, especially Katie and Cheryl, for getting us to this point where we appreciate all the organization that you guys have done on the front end to get us set up, with all the documentation that you provided for us, lining up all those interviews. Yesterday was a great day. We had an opportunity to visit with a lot of people who had good information to share. And so we took this morning and we pulled all of that together, and we've got some big picture things that we want to share with you today in this exit report that will be further detailed once that written report is delivered to you. So this is going to be kind of the snapshot version of the bigger report. That this is your team that you invited to come in. Each team member will be highlighting and addressing a specific goal area that you've identified. These are the team members listed in alphabetical order. It's not the order that you will be hearing from them, but each team member will have one goal area that they will address. They will also introduce themselves so that you get to know them a little bit better. And so without any further ado, these are the 4 areas that we're going to be looking at and providing feedback on. And academics, math, and ELA is first. And Mickey is going to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm Mickey Scharf. I'm with the Nebraska Department of Education. I've been at the department 2 years. My role is an accreditation specialist, and I specifically monitor Rule 10 regulations and statutes. Jeff had a slide, 3 or 4 slides ago, that showed an 00901, which is the continuous improvement section of Rule 10. And that highlights the regulations about building a profile, monitoring your plans, and having these visits. So thank you so much for all the organization. I've been in your shoes before where you're preparing for these visits and trying to cover all your bases. So great job. I can't tell you enough. I really wish, and part of the reason I chose to work at the department is visiting schools. So I'm really bummed that we can't be there and experience the school setting with you. So we have a COVID clause, right? That this virtual visit, we've got our recommendations and commendations. And again, thank you for your time. So on your academic area for math and ELA, your previous goals and commendations that we found from the materials. Great job on having district approved interventions. It's very clear the resources that you have in place for students to help meet that ELA goal. We also heard numerous references to the tiered placements of students based on reading probe data, tier 2 students, tier 3 students, and that intervention that they receive. We also heard inclusive model of services, having students receive as much of their instruction in the classroom, and that includes students with IEPs and high struggling students. Next slide, Jeff. Awesome. Our recommendations to help set your path for the next few years is we didn't want to add anything. We don't want you to recreate the wheel. What we want you to do is solidify and enhance what you're currently doing in these academic areas. We heard a lot of evidence of professional PD associated with behavior and SEL. We're recommending that the school explore academic instruction PD, high impact teaching strategies. We know you've attended some Marzano and Danielson work, and that might have occurred a few years ago. So let's polish that off and infuse that into our planning and instruction. We did hear students talk about needing more support in writing. So we're recommending thinking about writing probes or instruction that enhances writing. So make sure to address that in your goals. And then also Also, like many schools in the state, we use our spring assessment data or end of the year assessment data. And that's great, it's required. However, we do feel like you would get some traction and opportunity for celebrations with students if staff is utilizing short-term data, talking more about those reading probes and really just beefing up the kids when they gain 1 or 2 points on their progress. So thank you again very much. I'll turn it over to the next goal and commendations.
Thanks, Mickey. I'm Dave Friedley. I'm retired, and it's good. Aho, my friends. Thank you so much. If I could give each one of you a star quilt for all you did and what you are doing, I would. It's cold. I put one out that you can just kind of enjoy that today, but I would share it with any of you anytime. Thank you for what you're doing. I've got attendance, and we know that that is huge in your world. We've lived it. We understand it. Your students, your parents, your community say the school is doing good work in trying to improve attendance every day. They totally get it. They know it's a struggle, but they're with you, and we heard willingness in the community to help address the issue. And so you're going to be seeing some recommendations along that line. Universally, also, students say the incentives work, whether that was at the elementary or at the high school level. And I'll tell you, we were impressed with the academy. It shows that that incentive is working for those students. And they talked about that. It's kept them there. It's kept them engaged. So here's what we say. Okay. All right. Here's some recommendations. The students and parents, your stakeholders are saying they want more. They believe if you can offer more academically, if you can offer more in the career and technical, if you can do more hands-on, if there are some even after school programming, they'll go for it. They're ready. They say people who are involved will be there. And if you're offering the right things, they will come. They've talked about school schedule. They've talked about the offerings. They even talked about transportation. Things like, and Dan, you had mentioned hiring teachers that'll come in at 10 o'clock and be there until 6 o'clock. There was some support for that. They'd like to see different offerings that are happening. You might even want to look at, if your students have time for a study hall, maybe you don't require them to come in an hour early then, and don't let them come in at 9 o'clock. We're just throwing ideas out that they saw. And then even transportation, they talked about, if the bus goes around once and they miss it because their adult didn't wake them up in the house, they have no way in. So just thinking even transportation issues might be one of those things. And then just developing the community and tribal collaboration for school attendance. There was a lot of talk from adults about the way things used to be, how the tribe was intimately involved in that, how the court system got involved, how parents had to sit and do time if their students weren't there. And so I think our team says those are things to be looking at, and even the other people who represented a couple of agencies talked about their willingness to do that. And then finally, when we talk about the tribal collaboration, and it kind of gets into incentives and engagement, Ho-Chunk Incorporated has made a huge change in what Winnebago, the community, was and has been. And it just seems interesting that there is not a direct connection with school, with the career and technical, with the building. They have a construction agency. Why isn't that just leading right out of school? The computers. Why can't there be a connection And that just seems like almost a no-brainer. And yet we understand there are huge barriers that go with that. So when we talk about the collaboration, those are some of the things. A CTE academy or something along that line that would connect with HCI might be just something that would work. But once again, Aho, thank you, my friends. And thanks. You're doing a great job. Good luck as you work on the attendance.
Okay, I'm next. I am Laura Barrett, and I work at ESU 13 in Scottsbluff, but I am also the co-coordinator for Nebraska MTSS. And I know that many of you have had the opportunity to work with Casey Herner, and I get to serve on her team across the state. So it's exciting to see the work that you are all doing. And I know that ESU 1 is a great support for you in doing that. I have worked at an ESU many, many years. I was a special education director. I was a teacher of the deaf. So my world is in that. And now I get to be a part of MTSS. And so I was so excited to learn about all of the great things that you are doing. And so I got to talk about the accommodations related to behavior. And I want to start off with the School Climate Transformation Grant. And that is definitely a success. That is not an easy grant to write or maintain. And you guys are doing that very well. And you've been able to bring some staff on board because of that. And it overarches talking about behavior, mental health, social emotional, and Lisa's going to talk it into deeper detail into social emotional. But that's definitely been an asset for the district. And I would say that this is really a strength of Winnebago schools, is the ability to find grants to be able to meet the needs of what the district is facing right now. And this was definitely a prime example of that. There has been a lot of work done through that in implementing PBIS. And so I know that you're working with the University of Missouri Technical Assistance Center to provide implementation support of that. And that's exciting to see. You're starting to talk about behavior matrices and getting some staff onboarding. You have PBIS coaches, which is what will drive that home and be able to really implement that and see that great impact that PBIS is able to do. And so commend you on all the work and effort going into that. And as you see, like, we started to see the Bago way start to creep its way into some of the plans and start thinking about how we're using that as PBIS and problem solving and really embedding that and making it your own. And that's the important part. Like, this has to be your plan as a district to move that forward. And I was very impressed with the list of professional development opportunities. And I think Nikki mentioned it, or somebody's mentioned it, that everybody's going to professional development opportunities. Your teachers, your administrators, your clerical staff, your paraprofessionals. Kudos to you for recognizing the importance for having everyone within your district trained in all these supports. So that's definitely a strength. And since the School Climate Transformation Grant has come into play, a lot of that training has been related to behavior and ways to support students. So related specifically to restorative practices, seeing training about alternatives to suspension and expulsion, and how do we keep kids in the building. And that ties just with what Dave talked about with attendance. It really is connected in that. So just thinking a little bit next on the recommendations for moving forward. There's a lot of data related to behavior. In one of the action plans, they talked about doing the self-assessment survey, the SAS from PBIS. So that gathers data. Your goals were measured in terms of student office referrals. That's more data that you're going to be looking at. And so a recommendation would be to start thinking about that systematic process for gathering that data and then analyzing it. Might be a data dashboard, it might be a system, maybe it's just your teaming structures, but really thinking through how do we use that information that we've collected to really improve our practices. And the second recommendation would be kind of connected with when Mickey was talking about the training on academic areas, also thinking about some classroom engagement strategies. Your students were awesome. We were so lucky to get to spend almost a couple hours with them talking through some different things. And they are, when they describe their ideal classroom, they want that hands-on active learning and different ways to do that. And we all know that behavior is better when students are actively engaged in their learning. So how can we help equip teachers to be able to do that would be a question that your teams can ask in that. And so I think there's a lot of great things going, and I'm going to turn over to Lisa, and she's going to talk a little bit about the connection then with SEL.
Hey, thanks, Laura. I'm Lisa Pack, and I currently work as an instructional technology coach special educator, Hal, Dak, and more at Crofton Community Schools. That's what happens when you're in a small school. You get lots of hats. But last we took a look at the social and emotional learning goal you had. And one thing that was very evident is that social emotional learning was viewed as very important across all the stakeholder groups. We also see that you have that curriculum started and systems that are in place, like Project Harmony and your K8 second step. We heard from one teacher, Jennifer. She was just a pleasure to listen to, but she said, sometimes I feel silly doing those lessons on Monday, but then I see it working with kids. And so we really think you're on the right track there. And just as important is the mental health supports, not just in school, that's in classroom. So what about out of school, especially during COVID times? Our students need that more and more. And you've put into place some telehealth, which is, I know someone said we wish we could get that word out a little bit more, but you have it there. And that you also have mediators at your school. One school board member mentioned that has been a great support and that you're looking at getting or replacing a second one. And then the last thing I saw kind of throughout too is that you acknowledge the fact that staff self-care is needed during these times, and especially when you're making changes like this and you guys have a ton of goals, just making sure that your staff is taking care of themselves. So lots of great things going on there. Some recommendations that we looked at is just continue the expansion and implementation of the programs and the supports. I think they're working. And this is, to me, that's an evolution. It's a continued growth in that area. One thing we know is also look at that. I know your climate surveys were just given this fall, but utilize those to help guide those needs. We saw some concerns about bullying, relationships, connections in the classroom with teachers and along with the students. And then also maybe some social media concerns that students, I know one teacher even said, students might be on social media all night long and then they don't go to bed till 4 and then they wake up tired, so just being aware of those outside influences on students too. And also, I know Laura mentioned that it was a pleasure talking with your students, and I just encourage you to increase that student voice, listen to them, maybe have an advisory group or use your student council for that, just to get their feedback on what's going on, with them and the other students.
Okay, so this was the team I got to work with, and they were a great group, and they had terrific insights, and I hope that the feedback that they provided to you on those different goal areas will be helpful to you. My goal is to kind of wrap this up and when we take a step back and we're looking at the district as a whole, what are we seeing and what are some of the great things happening and what are some of the areas that we would like you to consider? First, I don't think I ever introduced myself. That's something that should have happened 15, 20 minutes ago, but my name is Jeff McQuiston. I'm the staff development director at ESU 17. So I'm the ESU 17 version of Rhonda Gendra at ESU 1, although I consider Rhonda a huge mentor to me. She's been at ESU 1 a few years longer than I've been at ESU 17, and she has just been a tremendous resource to me, and I'm sure a great partner for you. We've heard that mentioned. So my task right now is to highlight what we saw as some of the summary information that we would like to share with you. We feel like you've got some great support services recently established within the district to help address what some of those mental health concerns are that you have of your students. And it's been a great use of your grant funds. I think you're really leveraging your grants in optimal ways that help support your students and your teachers. So great job on providing that support. Likewise, with support services, you're doing an incredible job with providing professional development for your educators and for all the staff members of your district. They are they're not quite drinking from a fire hose, but they get a large, wide variety of professional development, both in training and that continued support that you're providing through your coaches. I think that is going to be very helpful, and teachers have shared how much they appreciate having that day-to-day support. You've got a tremendous leadership structure in place, starting with your administrators at the top. You've got some leaders who've been in place for 20 plus years, and they really understand the role of the school and the relationship with the community. And I think they are optimizing all of that and in ways that are very, very impressive. But part of that process that they're focused on is developing a leadership structure within the district and providing opportunities for teachers to be leaders in your CIP process. And we just heard some really very impressive insights shared from your educators. So excellent job there in developing your own leaders. Number 4, the total commitment. Everyone that we talked to, all the staff members that we had an opportunity to engage with yesterday, we could sense that they're not only taking all this professional development opportunity and just putting it in the classroom, but they are actually very strongly committed both to the school district and to the community. We've heard from parents and from board members the impact that it has on the community when educators and staff members from the school who don't necessarily even live in Winnebago are there present within the community, and that has made a huge impression on them. Which also goes to the next one, the connection that you've made to your community, the outreach that you've extended for them to be partners with you in this process as you're working with their students. And that's something we would like you to see you continue. So finally, to wrap this up, some recommendations that we see that we'd like to offer to you. First, strive for a system of support that demonstrates a balance between behaviors and academics. And this is in support of the MTSS process that you have recently put in place. We see a very strong and supportive emphasis on the behavior side. And we would just like to see you consider additional things that you could do on that academic side to help balance that out. We understand that you've got social emotional needs and behavioral needs that you have for the students, and how you want to make sure that you address those in order to see impact on the academics. But we want to make sure that you're also addressing that academic side and providing teachers with professional development that allows them to be even more effective in the classroom, relevant to the academic needs of the students. Number 2, establish a sustained commitment to realizing your vision and mission. Like we've shared before, you've done an incredible job leveraging the grant opportunities that you've been involved with and trying to have that impact your students. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving pieces. And we would just encourage you to, now that you've identified some of those programs and resources that you've got in place now, to stick with that for a period of time so that you can truly see the impact that those strategies have had on making a difference in the lives of students. It's really easy to hear about new opportunities and to maybe bring that in. But I think one of the things that we notice is that there's so much happening. We want to make sure that the teachers are optimized in this process. And by staying with and committing to some set programs might help leverage the impact that you're making with your students. And finally, strengthen shared ownership through communication with all stakeholders. We understand that you're doing an excellent job with communication. However, communication is always something that every agency and every institution can address. It's it's always going to be a challenge, no matter how good and how effective you are. There's always additional things that you can do to improve that connection with your different stakeholder groups. So we would just encourage you to stay the course there, to look for additional ways to strengthen those partnerships that you have within the stakeholder groups of your school. And we definitely feel like you're on the right track. We know a lot of the plans that you've identified right now have been recently identified, just at the cusp of being implemented. And we're confident that if you stay the course, you're going to see positive results. So for our team, we're going to be meeting shortly to continue working on the external written report that is going to be submitted to you and to the Nebraska Department of Education. Look forward to hearing back from us somewhere around the first part of March. It's kind of our target date to have that written report finalized and put out to you. We've got a lot of good information that we want to share, and hopefully today's report gives you a glimpse of the direction that we're headed. But finally, we want to thank you for your hospitality. I know you probably had the option of maybe postponing this visit since it couldn't be held on site, and we know how much you wanted us to be in your buildings and to experience what the climate and culture is of Winnebago Public Schools. But we truly felt that we got, through yesterday's visits and just from our other interactions with the school community, that we had a very positive experience in all those interviews and just working with you in preparation for today. So we want to make sure you let your staff know that we appreciated the time that they took to visit with us. We enjoyed the opportunity to visit with some students. They are a glimpse of your future, and it looks bright. Your parents, they appreciate everything that your school's doing, and you've got their support in moving forward. We had a very, very good conversation with your board members. Your board members are really tuned in to where your district is at, and they also see how the community how that community school relationship can be strengthened. And kudos to the administration. You guys have got the right vision, the right mission in place, and with the support of your school improvement team, that whole combination, it's just very powerful. So we hope that you're able to leverage that framework that you have in place to see the fruition of your goals.